speaking with Brad Bierman of thejuice.com, talking Syracuse football for previewing the 2021 season. I want to ask you this, and it seems like it affected more teams worse than some others. How much did the whole COVID, no practices and limited practices affect Syracuse? Because it seemed like it really hit home to a lot of schools, and they just didn't get any practices in over the spring. Uh, no contact until about an hour and a half before their first game, the whole 9 yards. And I think my gut's saying I need to ask this question to start off with.
It affected Syracuse greatly, to put it in one word. Syracuse is the type of program, Charlie, that it has to build up its depth. And, excuse me, it's really a situation where the pandemic season affected everything top to bottom for the Syracuse program. Like many other schools, of course, no spring practice. Then the players came in the summer and worked out in pod groups, and that was limited and restricted to what they could do. Then come August for preseason practice, there was a miscommunication, as it was put by the athletic department, between the coaching staff, administration, and the players about exactly what the COVID testing protocols would be during the upcoming season. That was for 2020. So that stopped practice 3 different times in the preseason. So that really also hurt in getting repetition in before Syracuse's first game. And then with a different schedule, well, bad luck for Syracuse. They opened up with 2 road games, lost both of them, of course, on the way to a 1-win season. So a program like Syracuse that's still building its depth, even in Dino Babers' 6th year in the ACC, it really hurt them. And with new offensive coordinator Sterling Gilbert aboard, did not have time in the spring to install his new offense. Same on the other side of the ball with defensive coordinator Tony White. So Syracuse was greatly affected by the COVID pandemic season.
You talked about the veer and shoot, I guess is what they're calling it. I want to get back to that in a second, but so we'll put a pin on that one. But I want to lead into this one. If my counts are right, and I say those very cautiously, Syracuse is returning the second to most starters on both sides of the ball combined in the ACC, only behind Miami. Is this so? Halfway through the season, maybe none of the season, maybe all spring, did they realize that, okay, this was a great practice for the real season now 1 year later? And it looks like a lot have said, hey, I'm coming back. I'm still buying in. And it's the real deal. Is that what's happening here?
Yes, it is. That is exactly what's happening. Syracuse has 15 grad seniors or redshirt seniors who have come back. So that is an incredible bonus for Dino Babers. And it starts right with quarterback Tommy DeVito. There was a lot of question marks as to whether or not he would return after a serious leg injury last year. So having those veterans, 15, is so important for a program like Syracuse because, again, they are building depth. They may have great 22 players that are starting, but when they get injured, the players that were coming in off the bench last season were basically totally inexperienced, learning on the job in the ACC. And that's certainly a very tough conference to have to learn as you go on the playing field in live action. And the 1-10 record was kind of symbolic of that. So this is a real big bonus. And Dino Babers played it coy the entire spring, Charlie. He did not release a depth chart. He did not want to put anything out there for other coaches to take a look at. He played everything vanilla through the spring like most coaches do. But this year, no depth chart. And that was something that I really thought was unusual for Dino Babers because he's usually at least putting out the basics there for fan consumption and media consumption, but really close to the vest this spring. And it's really important to have the balance of those 15 players coming back. And with, as you mentioned, the returning starters, the of redshirt freshmen who are going to be able to, some of them, contribute this season. Again, very important for a program like Syracuse.
I want to kind of get into the veer and shoot offense, but the same extent work in this question. So it's all in one lump sum. I believe coming in from Stark Vegas is Garrett Schrader, the transfer from Mississippi State, who is the RPO type, I believe. Um, would that fit better into the offensive scheme? And I know you just said, and I just learned this just right now from you, no depth charts have been released, and he's being quote unquote coy about it. Would is he going to be someone you think that could be opening day starter, or do you think it's still going to be DeVito who can run this system best?
That's an interesting question. I think that's going to be determined in preseason practice. I don't think there's anything that is set in stone. And Dino Babers has made that point clear through the spring and into the early summer. It's wide open competition. And Syracuse was hurting at the quarterback spot last year after DeVito went down and had to play a couple of true freshmen. But this year, that's not the problem. They have 5 quarterbacks on the roster. And Garrett Schrader is really, I think, going to make a run for the starting job. Now, is his RPO style and technique better for Sterling Gilbert's offense? Maybe, but I still think that Gilbert was running some effective play calling early in the season with Tommy DeVito. The problem last year was the offensive line. They did not have an offensive line, and Tommy DeVito was running for his life, and his timing with his wide receivers was off the entire 6 games that he played. So I think it's all wide open this year. And I certainly would not be surprised if Garrett Schrader got the starting job. But I really think in the end, Tommy DeVito is going to be the starter. There's a lot of loyalty there, and loyalty goes a long way to Dino Babers, albeit, he's going to make the contributions on the field, which I think he is. But it's going to be very interesting. And I will say that I think that you're going to see Schrader one way or another get playing time, even in second, third quarters of games, especially in the first 4 non-conference games of this.
We could just go so much in depth of everything you just said, but I'm going to try to keep this conversation flowing. I want to look at your schedule real quick and your non-conference games. I'm kind of smiling and laughing because for the average fan, you read the schedule and it's just the name of the school. Well, here's the head coaches you're facing on 3 of your 4 non-college. Now you already know where I'm going with this. Frank Solich, Greg Schiano, Hugh Freeze. I don't care what program you're at, coach is coach, and all 3 of these guys are proven winners. What's the outlook going into the 2021 season, not just on the ACC schedule, but your non-conference schedule as well?
Well, I think it's interesting that most places in Vegas or other sports betting sites are saying the over-under for Syracuse victories in 2021 is 4. I'm going to say here right now in early summer, they're going to get more than 4 victories because I think there's so much unknown in the national and even ACC media about Syracuse. And even with that schedule, let's take a look at it here now, opening up at Ohio. Well, Syracuse is likely to be maybe an underdog in that game in Athens, Ohio, with Frank Solich. And sure, they had a very limited schedule last year, so you really can't tell a lot, but they've been in bowl games 10 of the last 11 years. So we all know Frank Solich can coach. Most MAC teams are tough at home. So that is really going to be right off the bat for Dino Babers, a proven game, likely going in as an underdog. Then the dome opener in the renovated dome, which the fans did not have an opportunity to sit in last year, now with air conditioning. So game 2 against
Rutgers. Finally got air conditioning?
They finally have air conditioning in the Carrier Dome. And it's a great system, by the way. I mean, I've known the people that did the renovation this past year, and they've kept me updated for the last 12 months. And it's really fabulous what they've done to the dome and bringing it up to the 2020s. But game 2, Rutgers, Saturday, September 11th. Average temperature in Syracuse usually that day is 70 degrees. And if you have 35,000, 40,000 in the dome with that body heat, it really gets sticky. And Dino Babers has loved that home field advantage for the early September games, and now he doesn't have it, but everyone's going to be comfortable. So as you mentioned, Rutgers, Greg Schiano, well, they've had a great recruiting year going into this year, and he's really bringing that program back. That's going to be, for the second week in a row, a grudge match game, really key. Then they get the game that they should have started with as the schedule, University of Albany in game 3. That's how you want to kind of open up, in my opinion, always with an FCS game if you can schedule it. And then in game 4, Liberty. And, Hugh Freeze, as you mentioned, fantastic coach. 2 years ago down in Lynchburg, he was disabled up in the press box due to a back injury, couldn't coach on the sidelines. Syracuse won that game handily. Then they came into the Dome last year and handled Syracuse pretty easily. So, right there, those first 4 games, I'm thinking you really got to go 3-1, with 3 of those 4 games in the Dome, but obviously remains to be seen. Then in the ACC, you're opening up at Florida State. Syracuse did not play Florida State last year due to the pandemic schedule. Anytime you go to Tallahassee, that's going to be tough. Then they have Wake Forest in the Dome for the 3rd straight year, kind of a scheduling quirk due to the pandemic and how the Atlantic Division home and away sequence goes. They got to win that game. Then 6 days later, a Friday nighter against Clemson. Back, we know, in 2018 and upsetting Clemson in the Dome previously. So that's something that, national TV game, and Syracuse really loves to play in those Friday night games in the Dome. Then they have to go to Virginia Tech. And this is a team, obviously, they don't play that often, being a crossover game in the Coastal Division. But Syracuse fans love playing Virginia Tech going back to the Big East days. Always tough to play in Blacksburg. Then Boston College in the Dome for the, again, 3rd straight year, like with Wake Forest. This is a game you have to win at home. 2 programs that are somewhat even, although Boston College has had a couple of good seasons going to bowl games of late. Open date, then Louisville in the Dome. Again, a division game that you have to win at home. Then you go to North Carolina State. Syracuse has only won once all time down in Raleigh. And then finishing up with another game you should win at home, Pittsburgh against another arch rival. So right there, what do I see? 6, maybe 7 victories in the best case scenario. And that's really what Dino Babers is going to need to keep the heat off to retain his status. And he's only the 4th coach, Charlie, since 1949, going back to Ben Schwartzwalder and the great Syracuse program, that have made it to 6 seasons. And as you know, continuity is so important for programs in the head coaching position. So everyone's rooting for Dino Babers. They think after the pandemic season last year, he'll have everything going again. And I do think this is the most talented team he's had in 6 years. So those are kind of the variables in play here with that schedule and how Dino Babers is approaching it.
This has been good stuff. Been chatting with Brad Bierman of thejuice.com. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes.
My pleasure, Charlie. Thank you.